Alright guys, let's see if I can go ahead and go into this now, and still on dark screen, so let me kind of fix that. Let me switch that. There we go. Ooh, Lord. Apologize for my hair. Let's just go ahead and get into it, guys. Oh, my hair is so fucked up. That's okay. Today is date October the 19th, 2019, and this is how the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan. On how the Frack We Got Here, we do try to take the week's events, and try to make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, I do have to sit here and say that this is an adult podcast, which things of adult nature may actually be said, and things of graphic nature may be shown, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. Let's just go ahead and address the elephant in the room. We might as well go with the start. We might as well go with the first story, which is tragic in itself, considering the relevancy of how frequent is this particular action. But there's no way to do it but to do it, so we're just going to go ahead and go into it.
It left a Texas woman dead inside her own home. Overnight, the officer who fired that fatal shot was arrested and charged with murder. ABC's Marcus Moore has the story.
The officer at the center of a fatal weekend shooting, identified as Aaron Dean, booked on a charge of murder overnight.
Had the officer not resigned, I would have fired him for violations of several policies, including our use of force policy, our de-escalation policy, and unprofessional conduct.
During a news conference, authorities said he is not cooperating with the investigation underway into the shooting at Tatiana Jefferson's Fort Worth, Texas home. Dean's accused of shooting and killing the 28-year-old early Saturday morning in her home. A terrifying moment captured on the officer's body cam.
Put your hands up! Show me your hands!
Family members said Jefferson had been playing video games with her 8-year-old nephew that morning when she was gunned down right in front of him. Police showed up at the house after a neighbor called the department's non-emergency line to report that the family's front door was open. Relatives said Jefferson left that door open to catch some of the breeze that night.
I haven't seen anybody moving around. It's not normal for them to have both of the doors open this time of night.
When officers arrived, they parked around the corner from the house. And as you can see in this video, Dean approaches the back of the home and never identifies himself as an officer before pulling the trigger.
The fact that she got shot for looking through her own window is the problem here.
And the family desperate to see this case through its entirety as they prepare for Jefferson's funeral. Officer Dean is out of jail this morning on a $200,000 bond. Michael?
And it just goes to show you guys, unfortunately, Tatiana Jefferson is unfortunately another victim of, honestly, a trigger-happy officer. Now, you can tell off the bat where they said the officer was not complying, which means that he knows what he did when he fucked up, didn't announce himself as a police officer, and at the same time, why didn't he just go to the front door? I mean, there's a lot of questions there that we want to have answered, but honestly, they're not going to get the answers we want, and we're not going to get answers at all, personally. Just because of the fact of the matter that, yes, a cop decided to take it upon his own hands, didn't follow protocol, and now another person is dead. It only gets to the point to where how long, and I'm not trying to incite anything. Do not get me wrong. This is not an insight to a war on cops. This is not an insight to do all this stuff because that's what people want to feed into. But when is enough enough? Because it gets to the point now. It's like, what? You're not even safe in your own home. Like, I understand the neighbor tried to do the right thing, called 911. He probably should have called the neighbor first and said, "Hey, your doors are open. Everything cool?" Yeah. Probably should have did that, because if you're unsure about your neighbor and you know them, why not go check on them? That would be my thing. Because I'm going to be very honest and very blunt about this. If it comes to another black person and something suspicious, I'm going to go to said black person and make sure they're cool. I am not about to call the police on them, just because the police and their track record with people of color. There's just no way around that. Even more so in the next thing I'm going to show is with a young man who is also in Dallas, which, ironically enough, all these murders on black people seem to be happening so far. He also says something that is so profound that they tried to cut him off.
I give us the right to take my black life. My fiance and I bought our first house in District 6 because we thought Fort Worth was where we wanted to be. Over this last year, Sadly, we have lost faith in this city, its leadership, that's you guys, and especially the police. After the killing of Atatiana Jefferson, I'm ready to leave because no house is worth losing my life or the life of someone who I love. How can I raise a child in this city that is about to explode because of police brutality? The number one threat on my life is gun violence. Am I supposed to ignore this? We have no faith in justice, as it has become obvious that America isn't for us and neither is Fort Worth. How can we hope for justice with the district attorney office led by a known racist when she is backed by the very same police lobby killing us, totally giving her a complete conflict of interest, preventing her objective pursuit of justice for Tate? How can we hope for justice when your very own ex-police chief accuses his former employee, the city of Fort Worth, of racism? Come on. Fort Worth, your streets are a mess, and it's spilling over into the halls. David Cook, that falls on you. You're supposed to manage this city. Is that not correct? The lack of leadership, that falls on you, Betsy Price. How can we feel safe if we die in our homes? Where are we safe? Maybe in a prison or a box, because that seems to be the only place you want us. How can we feel safe if we're being killed for flashlights? Chief Crouch, you haven't addressed that yet. You don't walk in our shoes. You're for the most part lily white and old. Young black, brown citizens are dying at epidemic rates. Wake up. Jurgis Jordan, you're my city council member. 14 years and you still sit at that same seat like a grand wizard. Betsy Price, your time is up. You have led this city into destruction. You want to spend money on consultants? We want independent citizen oversight. No more money to McKinsey and Deloitte. Also, your resignation for lack of leadership would be nice too. I would call for the FBI, but I have no faith in the federal government led by Trump and A.G. Barr. The system is rigged against us, and I am a walking target. Every day I pull out my driveway, and on my way to work, I fear that I will be killed. The status quo is comfortable for you guys, as you do not live this experience. You don't have guns pointed at you. You aren't being killed for living and breathing in your own home. Your arrogance and lack of compassion speaks volumes. You sit before us, not listening, inattentive, and frankly, disgusting. May you all reap what you sow in the upcoming elections. There is no such thing as a blue life. Every time I see you describe, you desecrate the American flag and further entrenches the belief that you are against us. You have added to the division.
Your time is up.
If you are a human being like the rest of us, and realize your badge does not give us the right to take my black life.
And you have to understand exactly where that guy's coming from. He's right on all accounts. There's just no... It is literally and figuratively when a constituent comes up and tells everybody exactly what they need to hear, the level of nothing that you get back. Except when, Jamal, your time is up. Your time is up, Jamal. And he's telling the truth. He doesn't feel safe in his own home. It got to the point from him, he would rather sell his home to protect him and his wife just because of what's going on. And a lot of people, it's like, it never ceases to amaze me the environment one is in if you pay attention enough. If you pay attention enough, like, if you see cops killing black people in your neighborhood and you're black, you're not staying there very long. Why? Because you know at this point, simple fact of the matter is that the law of the land will sit there and say, you need to do self-preservation. There is no way around it. So again, this seems, I know honestly right now the whole story seems to be focused on Dallas. It is nationwide. I'm pretty sure even in my home state of Tennessee, you can still find where cops were trigger happy against people of color. Again, it's a very old problem that never seems to be addressed. But I just hope it gets addressed one day. Unfortunately, I hope it's not going to get swept under the rug. That's just me. Much like the Amber Geiger case, what they tried to do, which I still say was bullshit, because yes, she was found guilty, but she only got 10 years. And that case, honestly, is no different in the ways of circumstances than with the Atiana Jefferson case. Except the officer didn't announce himself, she didn't announce herself, and I would be remiss at this point because he's not cooperating, that he understands that there might be that blue shield of silence that might protect him. I hope it's not the case, but again, I haven't seen a cop yet face enough time for a sentence when they're taught certain skills and they're taught to preserve life and protect our society. I've yet to see a substantial jail sentence be given toward a cop. Do I think all bad cops need to be put down? No, I do think because I think that honestly, if you kill a bad cop, then they learn nothing. I think that they need to serve the same time as a criminal, or at the same time, if you take a life, then therefore it's life in prison. You took a life, so therefore your life is forfeit. That's how it should be. But it just amazed me so that even with the Botham Jean case, I don't have a lot of faith personally in basically in this case. Honestly, I mean, they still might get him, they still might convict him, but at the same time, I don't see a lot of movement. But you guys, if you feel differently or you have a different opinion, please tell me in the comments. Aside from that, another story I did want to bring up was the Supreme Court. Now, the reason why I brought up Supreme Court because in the last couple of podcasts I talked about was that they're going to be reviewing a series of cases. One being a case about abortion in Louisiana. This one is actually about immigration case. Now, this is an immigration case from one guy from Sri Lanka who was requesting asylum. For citing that it's actually a threat upon his life to be deported. Now, the reason why this case is so important, not only because it's the fact of the matter that under the laws he would be considered a political refugee, but this is about the asylum rules. Now, for all those that don't know about what asylum rules is, let me explain very quickly. Asylum is basically when a person from another country feels like their life is in danger, so they flee to another state, which would be us. They claim asylum, in which the Department of Immigration looks into the threat to see if it is a credible threat. If it is a credible threat, or the person that's applying for asylum has some sort of value, then he is given asylum and eventually given the path to citizenship. Now, as we all know with President Cheeto has actually been very, very, no, let's just say no. He's been very no on the fact of giving people of people from brown countries, as he calls them. He's been very non-existent about granting them asylum, although a lot of these people do have a lot of reason, considering that they're coming from countries that have been torn by drug cartels, by war, and just overall tyrants, in which Trump wants to be one so fucking badly. But the reason why this case is so important is because this will be used as precedence toward every other immigration case to those that are claiming asylum and want to be actually heard. Because currently as the law stands, if a person that does come into our country illegally and is caught by the Department of Immigration, they can do immediate deportation without being put in front of an immigration judge. Those that are claiming asylum usually have a stay to prove their case at a court. But at this point, Trump's ICE Gestapo is really just bypassing that entire statement, honestly. So, the reason why this case does go through, and the reason why this case does get ruled in favor of that individual, then that can be the case being used going forward. In the same sense that the Supreme Court could rule in that abortion case in Louisiana, which that again can be used to contradict Roe versus Wade. The reason why I don't have a lot of faith in it right now is because currently the Supreme Court is a conservative-leaning court, which means that there is a chance that all of that could be reversed, and that is a very scary thought. But we'll keep following that as we go along. Now, aside from that, Hillary Clinton back in the news. For all those that are fans of Hillary Clinton, I know, hey, Devon, thanks for watching, dude. Thank you, man, for watching. Thank you, John. Hey, John, I'm talking about your favorite person right now. Hillary Clinton has been in the news because she is suggesting that the Russians are grooming another candidate to combat the Democrats. I wish I could make this up.
Her own Russia conspiracy theory. In a recent podcast, Clinton says Russians are grooming a 2020 presidential contender. That candidate is Tulsi Gabbard. Here's Hillary Clinton.
I'm not making any predictions, but I think they've got their eye on somebody who's currently in the Democratic primary and are grooming her to be the third-party candidate. She's the favorite of the Russians. They have a bunch of sites and bots and other ways of supporting her so far. And that's assuming Jill Stein will give it up, which she might not, because she's also a Russian asset.
Okay, so just a fact, huh? Tulsi Gabbard's a Russian asset, and Jill Stein's a Russian asset. Out front now, Van Jones, host of the Van Jones Show. So that's how she puts it out there. I mean,
she's playing a very dangerous game. I mean, Hillary Clinton. If you're concerned about disinformation, if you're concerned, what the Russians do is they spread disinformation, they get us divided against each other. That is what just happened. Just throw out some.
I'm going to start right there because they go in the whole conversation about what she did. Here's the thing. No matter how you feel about Hillary, let's be honest. Has she been wrong? Think about that for a second. I know a lot of people who have their hang-ups with the former Secretary of State, former First Lady. You might have your hang-ups with her, but ask yourself one question. Has she ever been wrong? Think about it. If you go back to the previous election where she says Trump is basically a manipulated puppet used by Russia, and then we couldn't find out Trump's a manipulated puppet used by Russia. We also sat there and said she also sat there and said the DNC is. She also said that the DNC is corrupt. DNC is corrupt. People have actually left the office. And now that she's sitting there saying that presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard may actually be being courted by the Russians. Honestly, somebody who's been 2 for 2 so far, maybe they're not too far off with a third. That's all I'm saying. Maybe they're not too far off. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard, for everything that she stands for, being a senator from Hawaii, has been very non-memorable, especially in these previous presidential debates. She doesn't seem to actually have a political point. She doesn't have a political point to stand on, or what is her centerpiece for a presidency. It just seems to be. She's kind of like if Kamala Harris came from Hawaii, personally. And I feel bad for saying about Kamala Harris because, again, you hope for some people to stand out, and it's just not working. But again, we shouldn't be surprised by Hillary. Like I said, no matter how you feel about her, I just can't shake the fact that she just might be right a little bit because she hasn't been wrong yet. She hasn't been wrong so far. But speaking of Kamala Harris, she decided, like I said, not memorable. She decided that she wanted to ask Twitter directly during the presidential debate why they haven't suspended, why Trump has not been suspended from Twitter. Well, that didn't end well.
That you brought up last night was the president's Twitter use and the fact that Elizabeth Warren has not called on Twitter to ban the president from Twitter. I want to play a brief moment of that.
Okay. I don't just want to push Donald Trump off Twitter. I want to push him out of the White House. That's our job.
So join me in saying that his Twitter account should be shut down.
No, let's figure out why it is that we have had laws on the books for antitrust.
All right. There was a lot of talk about this moment on Twitter, ironically. Tommy Vietor, who worked for President Obama, put out a note last night saying, "I cannot believe Kamala Harris is pushing the suspend Donald Trump's Twitter account bull blank at a presidential debate. It's small ball. She is bigger and better than this." What's your response to people like Tommy Vietor and others who are watching who might have questions about why you were talking about that?
Well, I respect Tommy and his voice, but I think on this issue, we all need to understand that if you talk with those families in El Paso, if you talk with the family of the whistleblowers, if you talk with the family members of people who have been at the receiving end of Donald Trump's threatening remarks on Twitter, you will know this is no laughing matter. It is a serious matter, and it is a matter of the safety of those individuals. You can look at the fact that the shooter in El Paso was influenced by the words that the President of the United States, unfiltered, uses through this medium on Twitter. He has 65 million followers. And we have to take seriously the implications that are about the threatening witnesses, intimidating witnesses, and obstructing justice. And this is a private company that has rules of engagement, terms of use, and the president should be treated just like anyone else.
Well, this is where we usually say, I would like to understand, but again, Twitter has already sat there and said that we have reviewed all of Donald Trump's comments, things of that nature, and we found it within the terms of conditions to be acceptable. I know. I know. For a lot of people, I'd be like, well, explain Milos, explain all the other people that have been banned from Twitter. They did the same exact thing Donald Trump did, and they got banned. Donald Trump continually talks through Twitter, and yet he's not banned. I understand the argument. And what Kamala Harris doesn't understand, and that for a lot of candidates who try to silence Trump, Twitter is not going to do it because Donald Trump brings Twitter money. Not money in the sense that he's paying them. He brings money in the sense that people are going to have to go there to basically see what this fool is typing, because he doesn't actually do presidential addresses. He does tweets. Everything he's done is done from a tweet. That should tell you the level of how much of an incompetent jackass he really is. But Twitter has realized that's a gold mine. To them, they're a business. They're going to sit there and run with this for as long as humanly possible. So therefore, they're not going to ban Donald Trump anytime soon. However, I wouldn't be surprised if they ban Donald Trump once he's actually brought up on charges. Watch how quickly that changes, because at that point, it's not bringing any money. Think about this for a second. OJ is on Twitter right now. OJ is on Twitter ever since getting out. You think that's going to stop Twitter from blocking OJ and OJ allegedly killed people? Come on now. But then again, from a presidential standpoint, this is why I was disappointed in Kamala. It's like, you stuck to the point of saying we need to silence him on Twitter. Twitter has had almost 4 years. They're not going to silence him anytime soon. And I wish she didn't get hung up on that, which is what Warren pretty much tried to avoid. Again, Gabbard, Harris, Booker. Again, why do we have still so many presidential Democratic candidates, and it just seems like 4 of them can go tomorrow. Technically 7 can go tomorrow, but that's neither here nor there. But again, it's a moot point with this, and it amazes me so how this is still being followed up and looked into when Twitter has already said, look, we're not changing it. Pretty much get over it. Moving right along, you like baby powder? Well, Johnson & Johnson's just had a recall. Basically, their baby powder may contain, I love how they said this, may contain low levels of asbestos. For everybody who knows what asbestos is, it's basically it's a cancer-causing component that if exposed to long enough, you could increase your chance of getting cancer. So it's amazing that they're recalling this, which includes 33,000 bottles from a certain lot. That for simple fact of the matter is, the FDA still stands by it. Now, for my family, because my family a lot of my family's life was surrounding child development and child learning, and you're basically daycare. I noticed a long time ago that as I was reading this story, it just reminded me. My grandmother, my aunts, my mom, all who have run daycares, stopped using baby powder a long fucking time ago, and I never understood why. They actually went to other proactive means, but as far as using baby powder, they stopped. And I never understood why, because my grandmother, who's very wise, sat there and said there's just something about that baby powder that shouldn't be used on children. And keep in mind, my grandmother's 70, well, she's 70. She was 60 for the last 10 years, but that's neither here nor there. But she's 70 and, has decades of child rearing and development experience behind her. Probably could teach a damn class for all I know. But this woman stopped using baby powder on children before I was even 3. So she may have not known the science behind baby powder, but she just knows that from experience it's not healthy to kids. And I see why now I don't see a lot of baby powder being put on kids. Just because the fact of the matter is the FDA really can't be trusted with certain things that they say are deemed safe for you can literally contain things that'll kill you. But I just thought that was interesting. So, moving right along, this was actually an interesting story I did not know about, and I'm kind of glad to see that students are taking a stand on this kind of stuff.
Hi, Pelosi says he went to work not knowing what might happen next. He says it started with phone calls.
How y'all doing in the jungle? When are y'all going back to the jungle?
And only escalated.
I don't think anybody should have to put up with this at work.
Falobi is a chemist at the Bayport plant of Lubrizol, a multi-billion-dollar chemical company headquartered in Ohio that on its website boasts a culture built on respect. Falobi says he lodged an ethics complaint against a coworker a few years ago. That led to the phone calls. Last summer, he says he found this racist picture on his desk. In mid-August, his uniform and coveralls were vandalized, he says, with political and derogatory messages, some we can't show on TV. He is a naturalized American citizen from Nigeria.
I came here for a better life, you know. If I wanted to go back to the jungle, I mean, I know where the airports, how to do that.
In a lawsuit filed yesterday, Falobi is alleging discrimination, harassment, and a hostile work environment. He filed the discrimination complaint with the EEOC last week.
No one, I don't care what race you are, what gender you are, no one has the right to reduce you because of your color, white, black, or whatever.
In response, a spokesperson released this statement, quote, Lubrizol is deeply committed to diversity and inclusion as critical pillars of our culture and company values. We expect all of our employees to treat each other with dignity and respect, and we take all employee concerns relative to diversity and inclusion very seriously. At this time, we cannot comment further on pending litigation. Falobi says the situation has taken a toll on his health and marriage. The father of two, who's been on medical leave, is supposed to return to work next week.
What's next? I mean, I can't imagine what's next.
Now for that story, because I did want to get to the bottom part where I said about the students. Now for that story, for those that don't know, that's just honestly one of many where literally people of color are always going to. I'm not going to say always, that's a wrong statement. People are going to do this kind of stuff. And honestly, the companies which kill me about this, we want to include diversity and blah, 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 yakety schmackety. And then at the very end, we can't comment anymore pending litigation. If I was that chemist, sue their fucking asses off. I mean it. The only way you're going to get a company to change is by money. You hit them where it hurts in the wallet. And I hope that man gets everything he can get from that company. And at the end of it all, say, fuck it, I'm out. It is my hope he does it, because I'll be honest with you, I never want to work for a company that looks at my skin or looks at my hair or looks at anything in me and doesn't see anything less than a person. And I have to give it to that man. He is trying to stand hard on that one. But if honestly I was him, fuck it, I'm not going back into work tomorrow. Fuck that noise. I'm not going to work that week, because for the fact of the matter, nothing's going to change. You're going to be under a microscope, and the company is probably going to try to do everything they can to discredit you, so they have to wind up paying less. That's just the way that it goes. But the other story I did want to show at the bottom, which was actually the story I wanted to show initially, was that students at a Wisconsin high school basically protested because a black security guard was terminated for repeating a racial slur while telling a student not to call him that word. I wish I could make that up. That students at this school in Madison West High School walked out of class and literally protested because the security guard was just simply doing his job. And it amazes me that the student who was black called him obscenities, including the N-word. Anderson said that he told students multiple times not to call him that, repeating the slur in the conversation. Madison schools have a zero tolerance policy on employees using racial slurs. So he was fired that same day. Here's the thing. If a child is literally and figuratively calling you the N-word, as a grown adult, it is your job to correct that child. You're not going to call me that word. And the school overreacted. Now, I hope that man does get a job somewhere else, and I hope he gets a nice little settlement from the school, because again, it's not zero tolerance if you're correcting. That's like if a 15-year-old kid came to me and said, "What up, nigga?" And I'm like, no, you don't call me nigga. You can call me Will. You can call me Mr. Buchanan. You can even say Negro or Negus, which is the proper term you should be using. But you don't call me a nigga. No. No. That's correction. And the security guard was doing just that, correction. He was doing correction. At the same time, the school said, well, you shouldn't be using that word. I'm correcting a child. I'm doing your job for you. If anything, I should be paid your job. So hopefully that man does get justice. Hope he does get compensation. Really, I hope that he doesn't have to go back to that same situation. But honestly, kudos to the kids about being very proactive. And I love the fact that kids are protesting. They're walking out of class. They're showing that they're a generation of action. I can't knock that. I actually love that. Just the simple fact of the matter is that they're showing that, we are more than just, numbers on a sheet and trying to learn this bullshit education that hasn't changed since the 70s. But I love the fact that they're learning the ways of protest and civil disobedience, especially when civil unrest and unfairness is just going across our society. I love to see that. Unfortunately, other things I don't love to see, and I'm still trying to scratch my head over this, is how this happened.
There was, as I mentioned at the beginning, this decision by the White House to hold the next G7 summit of world leaders at the president's own resort, the Trump Doral International, right outside of Miami. This has caused, as you can imagine, a lot of hue and cry. There it is. It's an 800-acre resort. The president himself made a pitch at the last G7 summit. And joining us now is John Hudak from the Brookings Institute. He wrote a book called Presidential Pork. And that is essentially what people are calling this. Should the president be able to award himself a very large government contract for this summit that's coming up?
Absolutely not. We have constitutional protections against the president profiting from foreign countries, and it creates not only basic violations of ethics, but truly rising to the standards of impeachable offenses. And I think beyond all of that, the optics are so terrible for this president, especially this week, but he's, throwing caution to the wind and moving forward anyways.
But this is the next step in what's been a pattern, right?
Absolutely. This is a president who cares not about ethics or traditions or democratic norms or the Constitution itself. What he wants is to benefit himself and his family and his children who are employed by the organization that will benefit from the G7, and cares not about what other people do.
And we're going to cut it off there because, again, it goes in the whole thing. But yes, for some odd reason, the G7 summit, where all leaders do meet to talk about world events, Trump has taken it upon himself to basically say, hey, let's have it at my hotel. And when I heard that, I was like, throw another impeachable log onto the fire, because that's what it basically was. A president cannot profit from foreign countries. It is literally a part of the Constitution. At the same time, it's an impeachable offense. But then again, how many more impeachable offenses do we need? I think we're up to 20. Sorry, I had to count. We're up to 20. 20 impeachable offenses now, if that goes through. I mean, even the mere suggestion of it is an impeachable offense. Because the simple fact of the matter is, he's basically making money off governments. I mean, just as it was found out that most of the military stay at Trump hotels overseas. The fact that that Trump, wherever he has his meetings or whatnot, seems to be happening in Mar-a-Lago. Ever since he has a vacation, guess what? He goes back to Mar-a-Lago. Guess who is basically paying himself using taxpayer money? He is. And again, it's impeachable. Now, I'm not telling the Democrats to hurry up, because by them just saying impeachment inquiry just scares Republicans, scares Mitch McConnell. Keep in mind, an impeachment inquiry is just researching to see if enough evidence is there to impeach. It does not mean that the Republicans and President Cheeto can immediately go around saying, well, that's unfair. You guys can't do this. You can't do this without a lawyer. We need to be able to defend ourselves. It's an inquiry, not an official impeachment. So, and I always love the people that always sit there and say, well, it's not going to go through. The Republicans will sit there and prevent it. And keep in mind, yes, it does take 2/3 of the Senate to impeach. But ask this one question, because the elections are coming up. Those that prevent the impeachment are more likely to be removed. Hence why so many rats are jumping the ship now. And speaking of rats, well, we're playing the Celebrity Apprentice again.
Rick Perry has informed President Trump that he plans to resign. The decision comes amid the Ukraine scandal. Perry, who was Texas's longest-serving governor and ran against Trump for president in 2016 before joining his administration.
Yep, Rick Perry. You remember Rick Perry? The guy who couldn't actually name the three offices of government, and the funny part is the office he couldn't name, he actually became head of. Because remember when he went to the EP, he said, "Oops, I forgot about the EPA." Oops. And it's amazing that he became the secretary of the EPA and repealed back so many regulations for Trump's buddies that it basically put us in reverse side against climate change. Well, he's resigning. So if you really think about it, that leaves about 7 people left from the original administration. You know, Mr. I only select the best people. I only select the smartest people. You know, that guy. And now his EPA secretary has just resigned, which more than likely the deputy EPA director will probably be assigned temporary head, because again, when you've had 4 different acting Homeland Security, 3 different secretary of state, 3 different department. I'm sorry, let me do that again. You've had 4 people now as Department of Homeland Security. You've had 3 people as Secretary of Defense. You surprisingly only had 2 people at, well, no, scratch that back. You've had 3 different Attorney Generals by now, because Matthew Whitmore still counts. And correct me if I'm wrong, the only places that haven't changed is the Department Secretary of Treasury, because he's blocking your tax returns, and yeah, that's about it. I mean, you still got Mike Pence for reasons beyond our comprehension, but yeah, you still got that. But again, you know, not really surprised about Rick Perry, because, like I said, this Ukraine mess has unlifted so many cockroaches that I think there's still more if we keep on picking up rocks. For the simple fact of the matter, it was unmemorable what he did. He repealed everything that the previous EPA director had put in place, and pretty much our environment, our ecosystem is worse for it. So then, no love lost. He just got paid for doing a job he wasn't qualified for. So again, shouldn't be surprised by that. Moving right along, the reason this sexual story was crazy in itself, just because the fact of the matter is, like, I always see this and I can't help but wonder, when a guy's got this type of arsenal, what he'll do. And then I'm not surprised that he's actually America's terrorist. White.
State took these guns, 5 rifles, 3 pistols, and other components away from a man they say is the local leader of a small neo-Nazi group called the Atomwaffen that advocates white supremacist violence by lone actors. Court documents say a Seattle area man, Caleb Cole, posed a risk to public safety based on what investigators said was his training for what he believed is a potential race war. Prosecutors say they believe they prevented a massacre.
This is a hate-filled human being, but unfortunately one who possesses really alarming numbers of weapons.
But Cole is not charged with any crime. Instead, prosecutors filed a lawsuit against him, invoking the state's red flag law that allows authorities to take guns away for up to a year from people deemed to be a risk to themselves or others. 14 other states have similar laws, and now the FBI is starting to use them to go after people considered dangerous. No comment tonight from Cole. Pete Williams. And
all right, so let's go ahead and point this out, ladies and gentlemen. Suspected neo-Nazi, has neo-Nazi paraphernalia, has stated about an upcoming race war, has a shitload of guns. Where have we heard this story before? And I'm going to be honest, it amazed me that, yes, from a legal point, I was a little bit angry at first when I first read it. I was like, wait a minute, no terrorist charges? They haven't done anything. I mean, I was that way at first. I was about to get angry. I was pissed. And I thought, wait a minute. Technically, they haven't done anything. I mean, you can train. You can have guns. You can believe whatever you want to believe. But no actions have been taken. So I can understand that they couldn't file charges. But I do love the fact about the red flag law. And Tennessee is actually one state that does not have it, unfortunately. Because what a red flag law is just that if you are deemed a threat to others, or you think there is a case of you being a threat to others, then your firearms taken away from a year until you're investigated. It's more like a waiting period. Now, a lot of gun owners will probably feel very iffy about that, just because the fact of the matter is, if you're showing aggressive tendencies, then chances are that someone could look at you, report you, and then your gun's taken away from a year. And even though you may not be the terrorist they think you to be, but again, they could argue that. Now, in his case, the man is simply training terrorists. Now, I wish they could move forward and charge this man with acts of terrorism, but like I said, when it comes to language of the law, unfortunately, you can't. The best thing you can do is just take their guns away from them and just see what happens next. I get that, but again, that's America's terrorist. And I think that's where that's America's actually homegrown terrorist, and which they never want to admit. But that is the truth. That is America's homegrown terrorist. But moving right along, guys. Unfortunately, another cop video I have is where this is where I think these off-duty officers that have open to carry. This is why I say open to carry bothers me, just because of situations like this.
We're gonna stop. We're done. Okay.
Yo! Hey, 4 down. Hey, 4 down. Hey, he's not doing it. Don't There's no need for that. Hey, fool, I see I apologize. You grew up in Orange County? Is that where your corrupted cop videos came from? No. Get shit away! What are you gonna Yo! Hey! 4 down. Hey! 4 down. Hey! He's not doing it. Don't.
So, to give context, gun beats skateboard any day. Now, there isn't really an official story on this or as to why this off-duty sheriff investigator, I just call him white man with a gun, decided to pull a gun on a child with a kid that has skateboard. Now, here's my thing about open to carry. I still think open to carry kind of gives this sense of just, especially in law enforcement, which you would think in law enforcement, you would be careful. You are trained to handle situations. You were trained to read certain situations. Unfortunately, for a lot of you guys, you've only been trained 6 months, and it shows. For that guy pulling a gun on a child for reasons when the child didn't have a gun himself and he wasn't in fear for his life, it just didn't make any sense. I'm kind of hoping that guy loses his job. Because if you're pulling a gun on a kid in a skateboard park, how fucked up in the head truly are you? But again, I'm pretty sure that story is going to keep along as it develops, but I just can't imagine any reason for a cop to pull a gun on a kid with a skateboard, unless his ollie was truly that bad. But another story I came across is like, for all those that have student loans, pretty much Sallie Mae, Navient, Fed loans, pretty much Sallie Mae are all loving Betsy DeVos right now. You know, the Secretary of Education, who's basically a fucking idiot. Basically her, because she has allowed student loan companies to soar. Soar how much, you ask? Well, to sickening levels.
On the shoreline of Maui's Wailea Beach, at the luxurious Fairmont Hotel, Sallie Mae executives and more than 100 of its employees are on a 5-day paid trip, celebrating a record year, $5 billion in student loans to 374,000 borrowers. We confronted Sallie Mae CEO Ray Quinlan.
Okay.
We'd love to talk to you about what you guys are doing here.
I'd be perfectly happy to talk to you. I'm late for a meeting.
Quinlan says this is an annual sales meeting, and while they didn't pay for employees' families to attend,
We said, hey, look, Maui's a pretty nice spot, and so if you wanted to stay extra days, or you wanted to bring family, it's on you.
But while employees of one of the nation's largest private student loan companies enjoy the pretty nice spot, many of the students Sallie Mae has lent to find themselves in a desperate one. What is your actual balance right now?
$304,000.
That's a mortgage for most people.
I try not to think about it too much because when I do, I find it hard to breathe.
Working mother Paige McDaniel used a Sallie Mae government loan 20 years ago to pay for her business degree. 6 years later, the company offered her a private loan for her master's with a higher variable interest rate. When the bill came, she couldn't make the $1,500 a month payments. McDaniel was hopeful she could work out a plan with Sallie Mae.
They essentially said, I'm so sorry, we'll put a lien on your house and garnish your wages if you don't make those payments.
So 9 years ago, McDaniel and her husband filed for bankruptcy. But 6 years later, she was still deeply in debt. Bankruptcy erases some, but not all student loans.
They wanted over $2,100 a month at that point.
In 2014, Sallie Mae Inc. split into two companies, Sallie Mae Bank and Navient, which now manages McDaniel's loans. Both are currently being sued by the Attorney General of Illinois, accusing them of deceptive subprime lending, a failure to offer proper repayment options, and faulty collection practices. Navient denies the allegations. Sallie Mae Bank is seeking to dismiss the suit, saying in a statement in part, "We believe Navient, a separate and independent company from Sallie Mae, is responsible for all liabilities that are at issue." The current Sallie Mae Bank says it wasn't making loans when Page took hers, but yet its website boasts helping America pay for college for more than 40 years. Back in Hawaii, Quinlan defends company practices.
Did you guys give any consideration to the optics of this, to how a student who might be struggling may see a bunch of executives in Hawaii with their families as sort of
Having an annual planning session and recognition of accomplishments for our sales force has been something that has been done, I'm going to say, since the company was founded in 1972. And it's recognition of the hard work, but it's an important piece of planning. I think we're done.
But McDaniel's struggle far from done. She's hired an attorney to argue bankruptcy should have cleared her debt because it was a private loan.
It's not just my generation, it affects my children. How am I going to send them to college?
A common question at the heart of a crisis. Katie Beck, NBC News, Maui.
And quite frankly, it is one of those stories that is pretty much all of us. Now, don't get me wrong. With student loans, yes, there is a responsibility to pay it back. But there is a responsibility that at that point, it's hard to pay back if the degree you were supposed to get was supposed to help get the job that you wanted, but the job you want isn't there, then yeah, it should be at least relegated to what you can pay. And I always say, fuck you, Sallie Mae and Navient and FedLoan and all those other places that offer student loans. Fuck you. I will never apologize for that. Because the fact of the matter is, you have, from being under Betsy DeVos' position, student loan companies have never experienced this type of success. They haven't. Because the fact of the matter is, student debt forgiveness programs are being cut short. Keep in mind, didn't DeVos just have one just recently, and 99.9% of all applicants were rejected, and maybe 34,000 were accepted? Doesn't sound like much of a forgiveness plan to me. But then again, with student loans, it just amazes me the level of anonymity and the level of preference they have. Think about that. If you were to file bankruptcy, whether it be Chapter 7, 11, or 13, student loans are exempt from those. Think about that for a second. You could have a car loan, credit cards, things of that nature. You file for bankruptcy. Your bankruptcy's discharged. You have to tread water depending on your plan. Because I know for 7, it's a payment plan. For 11, it's, treading water for 10 years. I think that's how it goes. I think I got it right. Or it might be 7 is the... It's been a while. Sorry, guys. My mind is scrambled eggs right now. I'm trying to think. Well, you guys get the idea. But pretty much, whether you're in a payment plan or whether you get discharged, for the simple fact of the matter is, the student loans still stick with you. Think about that for a second. That level, what other category can still stick with you after you just told the U.S. government you are too poor to pay your bills? But yet, student loans still stick with you. How? And I think, expecting Betsy DeVos to do shit when she has a stake in most of these debt loan companies is like asking a blind man to give you directions. She can't see your problem. And at the same time, you see stories like her where you're trying to make payments and trying to do right. It just amazes me so that they're just not going to get the help they need, not with this current administration. And again, where is Sallie Mae right now? Vacationing in Hawaii because life is good. So I say this on behalf of a lot of student loan debt companies. Fuck you. Aside from that, another story I found was very laughable. Mark Zuckerberg in the news was saying that he's defending political ad rules, calling digital speech the new fifth estate. I find it very interesting that a man that blocks everybody on Facebook is going to talk about free speech. Because keep in mind, if you haven't seen by now, there's a shitload of Facebook ads out there, whether it's for Trump, whether it's political, whether it's not, and it's probably like many other things on there, bugging the shit out of you. And the interesting thing about Mark Zuckerberg is that he believes that right now he is being a bastion of free speech. Now, I know for a lot of you guys who are usually in Facebook jail or get banned or things of that nature are probably wondering that's not true because you literally ban accounts. So it's a kid. And think about it is it's not the first time he has rewritten Facebook's free speech rule. Because think about that for a second. It wasn't not too long ago where it did have a rule about almost 7 years ago that it will eliminate false or misleading content. That it would ban advertisements with that. However, ever since the presidential election that Trump decided to run in, that rule was taken down. So I find it interesting that a person Mark Zuckerberg, a billionaire as he, is going to sit there and say that he's defending free speech when there's a lot of you guys out there who would love to say bullshit on that. Just thought that was interesting coming from Zuckerberg of all things. As this is being posted live on Facebook, I expected if this isn't banned that I'm just not that important enough. Moving right along, guys, in Chicago, superintendent tells mayor he was drinking before being found asleep in his car. Superintendent A. Johnson told reporters that he felt that he might faint as he was driving home from dinner, so he decided that he still was going to drive home. Officers responded to a 911 call from a passerby reporting that someone fell asleep in a vehicle at a stop sign. Let's go ahead and be honest, no matter how you cut the mustard, yes, you were drunk, yes, you're driving, yes, you're a cop. Something tells me you're not going to have your job for very long. It's amazing that he tries to sit there and tell, well, he's not trying to hide anything, that he had blood pressure medication, you felt faint, and yet you decided to still drive. Yeah, you're not going to have your job for long. But moving right along, guys, for the last couple stories we have here, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And there used to be. If you were on a free lunch program, I was one of those kids that was in that program, was very helpful to me in my development. Although the food at our schools could have been a little bit better. Unfortunately, at this point, Trump is proposing a new rule that 500,000 kids could lose their free school lunches under a new ruling, which basically because he's basically tightening eligibility for SNAP. SNAP being the food stamp card program that a lot of our people are using. And the thing about it is, if he was actually able to tighten the reins on that, at this point, 45% of those estimated 445,000 kids who still get free meals. Some of them will start paying a price, a reduced price of 40 cents for school lunch, 30 cents for breakfast. And since they come because of that. Now, another 40,000 kids out of that may not even get that because based on regulations, they may not qualify anymore, which is fucked up because the proposal that Trump is basically giving basically giving Human Services is that they're going to basically be cutting $90 million away from its annual budget, which means that $90 million away from school lunch and breakfast programs. Think about this for 1 second. We are cutting a budget from a free school lunch and breakfast program. Meanwhile, the military is still getting money upon money. The Pentagon, to this day, cannot tell you where $10 billion went. The Pentagon cannot tell you where they spent $10 billion, but we're going to cut everything else. And that thing that kills me is that also at the same time, they're saying that by tightening the access to SNAP, this would close a loophole that allowed families receiving temporary assistance benefits to automatically get food stamps too. I don't know how that's a good thing. I don't. Because let's be honest, if you're a family and you're receiving temporary assistance benefits, yes, you need all the help you can get. It's a cold world out there. The minimum income, not to be on my soapbox, the minimum wage is still $7.25. It hasn't changed since the 70s. Think about, well, actually, no, the 80s. No, I was right. Late 70s, early 80s. It's still $7.25. It's 2019, and the minimum wage is still $7.25. Your average job with degrees that people are offering out there would usually be between $10 and $15 an hour. Everything has went up. Food prices went up. Rent and mortgages, car payments, things of that nature. Everything has went up except your paycheck. But the one thing they want to cut is the same assistance that some families have been using to get by. Again, I shouldn't be surprised about this being under a Republican banner. I shouldn't be. But again, it's amazing to me how crazy it truly is. And again, that, you're attacking the one area that can't defend itself. Free school lunches. And think about this, free school lunches and breakfasts, they are needed. Find the money elsewhere. But then again, I'm not a politician, because if I was, I would be cussing out everybody that says this is a good idea. But speaking of things going higher, do you like wine? Do you like cheese? Do you like scotch? I'm perfectly a fan of scotch. I love Jameson. Jameson's kind of a sweet whiskey, but it's pretty good. But anyway, I digress. If you love those things, unfortunately, the tariff man, Trump calls himself, is putting a tariff on European wine, whiskey, planes, and cheese, which basically means that you're probably going to see a increase of 25% of tariffs on those things. What does that basically mean? That basically means you will be paying more. And trust me, no one's looking forward to that. Because amazingly too much, keep in mind, tariffs don't do well for anyone. As Trump tried to say before, when he's in his tariff war with China, you can tell how it affected everything else. So we should not be surprised, for the simple fact of the matter, that tariffs now being implemented on other things are just going to drive up prices, which then again is going to affect the economy. Increase in prices never led to an economic boom. I keep saying that because every economist has always said the same thing. Increased pricing never works. What has worked to have an economic stability and increase is that you have to invest in the lower and middle classes, and you have to tax the rich. Don't believe me? There's an entire historical. If you don't believe that is correct, there is an entire historical financial timeline that you can look up, and you can see where America has been successful and where it's not been successful. And America was successful when the tax rate among the rich was twice as much as it was in middle income. Tax breaks were given to the middle income families, and the simple fact of the matter is you did not cut the lower budget. Consumer pricing confidence has increased, spending has increased. Those were considered good fiscal years. So, really we shouldn't be surprised about that, except for the simple fact of the matter, guys, if you do love cheese, if you love wine, and you do ride airplanes, yeah, the price is about to go up pretty soon because Donald Trump still believes he can get the better deal. Which, keep in mind, the only time Trump's ever got a better deal was honestly in bankruptcy. But anyway, that's our stories for this one, guys. So we do going to get to our feel-good stories. We'll try to do a Frack We Got Here with feel-good stories. We just simply try to leave you guys on a good note. I do know a lot of times we do talk about the ugly side of society, not the no-so-good parts, and honestly just leaving us kind of defeated, a little bit dark. So we try to do it in the weekend. Try to leave you with some feel-good notes and some things I thought were cool. So I'm gonna start with this one. This honestly is a marriage at this point. A senior living couple are celebrating 72 years of marriage while in the home. And he wanted his wife to be, dressed up, all dolled up so they could take pictures. And after 72 years, damn. And I'm not saying damn as if that's bad. I'm saying damn as if that's impressive. Because most marriages I've seen don't even make it past a year or 10 years. This made it 72 years. And he still looks at her the same way he did when they first met. Now, it is amazing to me that the staffing facility that actually they're staying at wanted to make it memorable and, get her all dressed up, get a picture and whatnot. And at the same time, what I didn't know was that his wife is dealing with dementia, but on this day, she did recognize her husband to be. So, again, thought that was a cool ass story just because, it can happen. You can find love of your life and you can find happiness. even though if y'all to the nursing home, in the nursing home, y'all can still find happiness. Now, the next story I got is honestly, this gives me an idea for something, but I'm just going to go ahead and hopefully it plays. If not, I'm going to explain it. Let's give it a shot.
Halloween hasn't come early for this guy. Putting on a floral mask, sunglasses, and black hat is a regular thing for him. He's an angel in disguise and carries with him crisp $100 bills that he randomly gives out to total strangers. Stop it! He started his giveaways in 1983 in Kansas City. His real name is David McGee, and he's a 61-year-old chiropractor. Over the years, he's given out $185,000, and he's not a rich man.
It's just a reward that I can't explain. It's just a warm, it's like a love. And so I think it's just like a God's love that I feel, and I share it with that person. Happy Thursday, everybody.
I witnessed his extraordinary generosity in Times Square.
And it's you. This is yours.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
People just can't believe their stroke of good luck.
I feel like you could use it.
He knows what it's like to be down and out. He was once homeless himself. Now you have a personal connection, a personal reason why you're doing this too, right?
Well, I slept on people's couches, and I was homeless for about a year. So I have a soft spot for homeless people, and I'm not afraid of them.
Not all heroes wear capes. And I'm going to be honest with you, love that story because let me ever come up. If I ever come up and I'm safe, and I'm good, my family's good, and I still have a lot of income that I need to, I'm not going to do anything with, and my family and friends are okay, I am finding, you know what I'm going to do? I can't do Spider-Man. I'm going to be honest. I can't do Spider-Man. I am too big to be Spider-Man. You ain't going to see a jacked up Spider-Man come up to you and be like, hey, man, how's it going? Dude, you ain't Spider-Man. It ain't believable. I thought about doing the Hulk, but that's a lot of green makeup to cover this all up, and this guy gets shaved, and all this body paint, and then I'm walking around in purple trunks, and I'm barefooted, and you really can't have the Hulk wearing flip-flop. But anyway, that's just a little too much. I would probably find a masked character that fits my body frame and whatnot, and I would probably do what that gentleman did, which was simply be kind. I mean, if you got his generosity was just the fact of the matter is he's just giving money to complete strangers. I know that might seem like a crazy concept, but I do get where he's coming from. It's just like random act of kindness. Doesn't take much to be kind to somebody. Doesn't always need to be involving money or things of that nature. You can devote your time. You can listen. You can give in other ways, but it's a random act of kindness. I can't knock that. That's why I told that man, I said, Dr. Moomba, I kind of wish they never gave his identity. It could have been a folktale like Robin Hood. It could have just went on and nobody would have noticed. But again, for me, I just thought that was a cool story. And like I said, if I ever come up, I might do the same shit, but I have to figure out what superhero costume will work with, this and this. Because, you can't be Deadpool with locks and think that somebody's gonna immediately recognize you, because there's no such thing as Jamaican Deadpool. Let's just be honest about that. Anyway, last story I got here, guys, was basically a man who also wanted to make a difference in this community, who developed a boxing gym to actually help students prepare for graduation. How it actually works is that his boxing gym does have an after-school program in which they do mentor kids. Now, the thing about this is he calls it Books Before Boxing, in which that to make sure the child is getting all the help they can, whether it's tutoring, whether it's assistance with certain subjects like English or my nemesis, math, because there were some aspects of math I didn't like, but I loved English and I love social studies and history and things of that nature. But anyway, tries to help the kids get learning to get over the learning humps and to basically get their grades up. And then once the grades are up, then they actually get to take part in the boxing classes. And I love the fact that basically with his program, which he is actually was hoping to actually have an impact in the community, which actually did, which they are now boasting a 100% graduation success rate. And the thing about this is, and what I love so much about it, and I've said it best, you have to, investing in your community has rewards. And in this case, taking those kids and making sure they have a better life, or equipping them for a better life, and making sure that they are getting their education. And yes, And people say, well, boxing is a violent sport. Chick, I'm a fan of boxing. I've been a fan of boxing since I was 9 years old. And the thing I will say about this is just that, yes, I can see from boxing being a violent sport, but then again, almost every sport's violent. Basketball's violent, football's violent, hockey's violent. Even Dungeons and Dragons can be violent. In literature, I know Alex, and thank you, Alex, for watching. Thank you, Nita, for watching. I know Alex. Let's be honest, I saw one episode because, like I told my friend Alex, I like D&D. I've never played D&D. I've never been a part of an actual event. So that's actually going to change in about the next day or so. I'm kind of excited about that. But even D&D, from what I've read, from what I've seen and what I've viewed, can be violent in literature, not violent in real life. But what I'm saying is just that everything can be learned from something positive. And so I love the fact that what he's doing is saying, well, for the simple fact of the matter, he's using what he knows to basically get kids in the door. No different than an after-school football program, no different than a basketball program, or anything of that nature. It's all about making sure the kids are invested. That's the big thing. And that's where he took from that to where he wanted kids to graduate, he wanted kids to move into college, or go into trade school, which I don't think, on a side note, gets said a lot, because trade schools are just as valuable as college and universities. I've seen master plumbers, electricians, contractors. Those guys can end up with high-ass careers. You can. Impressive. Being a master plumber, trust me, you will be in demand. Master electrician, you'll be in demand. Master contractor, they're still building shit. You'll be in demand. And there's so many other trades. Welder, especially welders. Welders are always in demand. So again, I just wish that it was actually said a lot more. Just the simple fact of the matter is just that, you don't always got to go to college. You need to pick a trade. Pick a path where you'll be productive for you. That's the thing about it. But I'm getting on a soapbox, like I said. That was just a good story to me as far as just taking boxing and going from there and just trying to explain that, yes, there is something positive that can come out of this, and it can impact the kids. But let's be honest, as they say many times, our kids are our future, and as in the words of Old Dirty Bastard, Wu-Tang is for the children. But that's going to do it for our show, guys. Thank you all for watching. Some shameless plugging before I do get out of here. I'm not the only cat that does actually have podcasts. We'll start with my friend Vaughn Witherspoon on Facebook. Has several podcasts of his own. He actually has one called the VST, which is just a podcast of news. That news can be video games. That news can be music. That news can be movie trailers. Interactive show just like mine. He actually has Rhythmness, where he can reminisce over the rhythm, in which he does music albums reviews from the past to the present and grades to a 4-tier rating system. You want to know what that is? You have to watch from this to find out. He also has Random as Fuck with Uncle VZ. What is Random as Fuck? Random as Fuck is the pool of ratchets we sometimes dip our toes into to take a break from life and have a chuckle. Some videos will make you think, some videos will make you cry, some videos will just stick with you. Like a person sticking at a Burger King on fire waiting for their change and all the Burger King employees have left. I wish I could make that up. But all those shows can be found under Vaughn's Facebook. So if you look up A. Wetherspoon, you'll be able to see the calendar as when all his shows will be appearing live on Facebook and on YouTube. Also, my other brother who will be here shortly, Thomas Reed, a.k.a. Mountain Puncher, has a podcast on called To Be Determined Fit and To Be Determined Podcast. What's To Be Determined? To Be Determined is a fitness podcast. If you've seen Thomas, you know that this brother stays in the gym all 7 days. Loves to talk about fitness, loves to talk about out, let's talk about workouts, let's talk about nutrition, let's talk about various subjects that he comes across that he feels that are just welcoming and need to be talked about. Again, but again, with his To Be Determined Fitness podcast, which will be available if you look up Thomas Reed on Facebook, starting at 3 p.m. Central Time today. Also, my other brother from another mother, Trace Brown, has several podcasts of his own. He actually first has The Bump Down, which is a musical podcast, which is music, culture, knowledge, and numbers. He goes with chart work, what's hot on charts and what's not. He also talks about music because this man definitely does have insight on the recording industry that I do love to hear about. And also, he does love to play upcoming artist music. It's also Vaughn does as well. So if you do want your music to be played, whether on Rhythmness or on Bump Down, please look up Trace Brown on Facebook or A. Wetherspoon on Facebook, and they'll give you information on how you can do so. so. Also, with the bump down, he actually has a Smoke with Truth, which is basically the Check Your Ego at the Door podcast, which is not for the faint of heart, because he's going to talk about the truth, but like most things in truth, it's going to piss you off before it sets you right. So if you do want to go to where angels dare to tread and want to be able to have that real conversation, as Trace says he wants all the smoke, then the Smoke with Truth is definitely for you. And also can be found as far as his Facebook. So if you go to Trace Brown, the King Eddie Wayne, on Facebook, and be able to see when those actual times will show. Aside from me, with the How the Frack We Got Here, it's usually every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon. I also do have an Off Limits podcast, which will probably be a little bit later today. What Off Limits podcast is what I've observed all my life. We've been told so many times not to talk about sex, politics, religions, whatever, with people to avoid uncomfortable situations. I believe a lack of those uncomfortable situations have led to us not having civil conversations to where people are talking, yelling at each other, but not really getting their points across and not hearing the other person out. The whole idea of Off Limits podcast is not only the fact that we are going to go there, and I mean there on the subjects nobody wants to talk about, but at the same time, we're going to introduce the idea of having those civil conversations again, because I do believe the more civil conversations we have over uncomfortable subjects will make us better people and basically make us progress. However, with that, the Off Limits podcast will be later tonight, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Also here on Facebook Live and YouTube. Just look up my name, William Buchanan, to see that. And also my buddy Wingnut Gaming, as I talked about John earlier. John does have a gaming channel called Wingnut Gaming on Facebook. Wingnut Gaming is basically my buddy Wingnut, who plays first-person shooters. He plays Apex Legends. He plays Battlefield 5. He plays Call of Duty. He plays Fortnite. His choice, not mine. But he's also a very social cat that always loves to talk to people and basically likes to have fun. And if you do like those kind of facts, then I definitely recommend him. Definitely look up Wingnut Gaming on Facebook and like, share, subscribe there. Speaking of like, share, and subscribe, we also do have the YouTube posts. We also have YouTube pages on the road. So if you do look up How the Frack We Got Here, if you do look up Off Limits Podcast, if you do look up BigBZA.podcast, you do look up DJ King and Wayne, and you do look up To Be Determined. That is To Be Determined as in TBD. As basically the letters TBD, the number 2, and then be determined. They all will pop up with active YouTube pages that have each of our podcasts that we've had so far. Be able to like, share, and subscribe from there, and be able to show what you have from there. And also with How the Frack We Got Here, we do try to cover the week's events. So if there are stories that I missed or stories that you think that need to be addressed or want to be researched into, then please let me know by either replying here in the comments or basically going on my page at Facebook and just letting me know from there. The last thing I will say about How the Frack We Got Here, it's all about staying informed. What is staying informed? Staying informed means that you're not accepting everything you hear at face value. You are literally going in and trying to find the information that you can and be able to hopefully find the truth within it and be able to go back and show somebody else what you found in hopes of inspiring them to do the same. Because an uninformed country is definitely terrible. An informed country is wonderful because they can make a lot better decisions than an uninformed country, because an uninformed country is what got us Trump, and that's how the frack we got here. So thank you guys for all watching. Hopefully see you forward on the Off Limits podcast tonight. And like I said, if you like the show, let me know. If you don't like it, let me know. If there's things about it that need to change or things you'd like to see more, again, let me know. You know how to do it by now. Thank you all guys for watching. Hope you have a good weekend. I'm out.